Kate looked at him in alarm. All of this was suddenly happening too fast. She felt as if she was on the washer's spin cycle. "Wait!" He put a finger to her lips. "No more waiting, Kate. It's time you trusted me. I'm going to be your husband." She met his eyes again. She could feel the weight of the ring on her finger. This man was going to be her husband. She couldn't speak around the lump that had formed in her throat, so she merely nodded. Colin hugged her even more tightly before releasing her. "Go pack. Bring warm clothes. Leave everything to me. I'll pick you up at 6 a.m. It's going to be fun, Kate. You'll see. The adventure is about to begin." It wasn't the first time he'd asked her to marry him. A few months ago, he'd tried, only to see that she couldn't take off her wedding band. Any other man would have headed for the door right then. But not Colin. He'd given her a sad smile and said, "I think they're playing our song." Except there hadn't been any music playing in the living room of her house, and yet he'd pulled her up from the couch and into his arms. "I'm sorry," she'd said, as he drew her closer and began to move slowly to the non-existent music. "It's all right," he'd whispered next to her ear. "You will take it off when you're ready to wear the engagement ring I'm going to put on that lovely finger." He had leaned back to look into her eyes, and she'd felt her heart swell with love for this man who had come into her life so unexpectedly. She'd almost given up, believing that she couldn't love again after Danny. For years after his death, her life had been full with raising their 2 girls alone and working to support the 3 of them. But now Danielle was almost through with college, and Mia had a successful career as a graphic artist. Both had their own apartments. It seemed as if suddenly Kate had found herself with too much time on her hands, living alone in a home too large for just her. After some disastrous dates, Kate had told herself that she didn't need a man, which was true, at least financially. She'd found she had a talent for writing. As a ghostwriter, she'd made a name for herself, writing other people's stories. She'd never had to touch the money she'd gotten from the death benefit the oil company had paid on Daniel. Invested all these years, it had multiplied again and again. One day, she'd awoken to find herself a wealthy woman who wasn't even middle-aged, if the statistics were true. And then she'd met Colin. She'd told herself that she was still young enough to start over. She'd gotten married at 17 to the love of her life, had her first baby and her second in a 2.5-year span. Daniel had been all of 18. By the time she'd given birth to Danielle, he'd been working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Then the refinery where he worked in Houston had exploded one day, and he and hundreds of others had been gone. There had been such confusion after the explosion. Stories of people wandering around, not knowing who they were. Because so many were incinerated in the explosion, it had been impossible to identify the remains. That morning, Danny had gone to work and hadn't come back. In her heart, she wanted to believe that he had walked away that day with an injury that had left him not knowing who he was. That's why he hadn't come back to her. For a while, she'd expected him to show up one day on her doorstep. But he'd never come back. Her oldest daughter, Mia, had never minced words. "Daddy is gone. You have to accept that. You have to move on." Her daughters had been happy and maybe a little relieved for her when Kate had told them that she'd met someone. "Colin's younger, but just by 3 years," Kate had said, feeling giddy and youthful, something she hadn't felt in years. 3 years? That's nothing, Mia had scoffed. "So tell us about him," Danielle had said, curling up on the couch and looking at her expectantly. Danielle was the romantic in the family. Kate hadn't known where to begin. "His name is Colin. He has his own company. He owns numerous small businesses. He's enterprising." Mia had rolled her eyes. "Really, Mother?" Danielle had laughed. "It doesn't matter exactly what he does. Does he make you happy?" "He makes me laugh," she'd said, and had found herself smiling.